Just, this is how much I love film. This is how much I like it.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't it great, Patrick?
It's great, Michael.
You can't do this with digital,
It's
can
great.
you? You can't do it with digital.
I love it. You're about to tie a celluloid noose around my neck.
Right. Catholic Film Club, Film is Dead, Take 3. Welcome to the Catholic Film Club. My name is Michael Coy, and I'm joined by, what's your name?
I'm Patrick.
Bautista?
Yes, Bautista.
We are video producers for the Center for Catholic Media at Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas. And we're here to talk about film, the thing that Christopher Nolan invented.
Yes.
What we're talking about is the film that goes through the camera. You know, when you see like a film strip or a, you don't know what I'm talking about?
You're speaking Spanish to me right now.
Okay. So movies, right, Patrick?
Yes.
So what is a movie?
A movie is a story.
No.
Okay.
A movie is a series of still pictures played at 24 frames per second or whatever frame rate you prefer to make the illusion of movement. That is the
deep.
thing. It's not deep, actually. It's like foundational, buddy.
We're already getting heated.
So what we're going to do today is I am going to be arguing that film stock, celluloid stock, the kind that goes through the camera and goes through a projector in that old-timey kind of way, is the purest form of cinema, maybe even the only real form of cinema.
Ooh.
And you will be arguing something a little bit more moderate and reasonable.
Yeah, I think I'm less interested about debating because I also have thoughts and feelings about film.
Because you'll know I'll win.
Yes, basically. No, I'm kind of approaching it as if we're putting analog film on trial, just for the sake of with the transformation we've seen with less and less people actually shooting on film and just using it more as an aesthetic choice. The world is pretty much annihilating anything analog. So I'm kind of approaching it from me being a small fry and young person in this world of just thinking futuristically and seeing and questioning how, like, what its relevance is going to be in the next 10, 20, 30 years.
And as a small fry in this world who is not young, which is very sad,
It is.
I'm going to be really just doing my younger self proud. This is an episode for 20-year-old Michael,
Yes.
who would have died on this hill every single day and would have fought for these opinions to the hilt, if that's a phrase.
I think it is.
And now these days I know that I'm right, but obviously
Really? Okay.
it doesn't matter to me as much anymore. Although
That's such
we
an
are
interesting way of putting
if you're
it.
watching us on YouTube, we are shooting this on film.
Yes. Yes, we are.
Yes.
We absolutely are shooting this on film.
So I have a lot of thoughts about this,
Sure.
Patrick. I think it would be easier for me to get through my tangled web of a mind if you kind of set a challenge for me right
Sure.
now.
I think the challenge is going to be, I'm going to throw a bunch of questions at you surrounding analog film and kind of play devil's advocate in this episode and be the bad guy and just ask why film and kind of force you to try and defend film at all costs. Not from like an antagonistic POV, but more from an inquisitive POV, because I'm growing up in the generation that YouTube existed and hard copies and analog things existed kind of only in the form of CDs, cassettes. VHS was kind of going out of style when I was growing up. I mean, we still had them, but most people didn't have that. So like DVDs, CDs, Walkmans, those things were around when I was growing up. But by the time I was probably in high school or a teenager, they were pretty much going out of style. Like Blockbuster went out of business when I was, I think, 15 years old or something like that. So I'm the social media age, and my generation and the generations to come are pretty much just going completely digital and completely online and electronic. So I'm just going to throw out questions to you as if I am a proxy for the future, if you will.
Okay.
And just start getting into it. I can start with the first question we have.
Before you do that,
Yeah.
because you were talking about your experience with analog film. Now, I also have very little experience with it because you kind of came up in a time when it was just like dead and buried in the ground, except for kind of the elite few like Christopher Nolan and Quentin Tarantino who still shoot film and always will. I came when it was in its final death throes, when it was in the about 2010, 2011, around there. This is like post Avatar, post the 3D revolution, quote unquote, that then just completely died and like a parasite left its host decrepit and sick.
Analog at this point, analog film is the concept of it is essentially obsolete. And as I said previously, directors, studios, whoever will use analog for a certain reason, not discounting the purists, and I mean that in a respectful way, the purists that only exclusively shoot on film. But to the point, it's not a common thing anymore to shoot on analog film. One could say it's an old-fashioned art form or style of filmmaking that overcomplicates the process, and the production is much more expensive and timely and costly to shoot the movie on film. So my question to you is, why regress to this old style of filmmaking that seemingly is counterproductive, more expensive than shooting on digital? So why shoot on analog film?
Well, I think the first answer is that it's beautiful.
Agree.
So if we're going to that mode of thinking about asking ourselves what is the good, the true, and the beautiful, it's beautiful. When it's exposed properly, you're going to get colors that are not yet available in digital. And I think more importantly, because digital can, like I said, pretend to be film. There can be film stock filters and digital grain and things like this. But when it is projected in film, that is a completely different experience. Have you seen a film projected on 35 millimeter where you were conscious that's what you were doing?
I don't think I have.
Yeah, you might have when you were a kid.
Yeah.
When were you born?
01.
01?
Showing my age here.
You still might have seen a couple.
Yeah.
But when you were probably going to the movies a lot, it was probably mostly digital.
Yeah.
So if you are able to go to a revival screening, you'll see that there is a completely different experience when you're projected on 35 millimeter, especially. And we can see that with like Christopher Nolan releasing IMAX films in 70 millimeter. Once in a while, even in Kansas where we live now, there are movie houses that still have those projectors.
Does Screenland Armor?
I do not know. They're a
filmed?
great theater, but I think it's purely a digital screen. Shout out Screenland Armor.
Yes, we love you guys.
Best theater in Kansas City. It's a different image. That's the best I can describe it. It's a softer image, and what you get is something very akin to a stained glass window. What you are seeing is light passing through translucent celluloid. So you are seeing a transparent image with light blasting through. And that is getting you something that is completely different than a digital image being thrown onto a screen via a digital projector. It's not as efficient. It will break down more, but the visual that you see is just, in my opinion, more beautiful.
Sure. Would you say it's superior in every way to digital? Or would you grant that digital has some, steps up from analog film?
Well, to go back to your question, you were talking about the ease of the process and is it obsolete in this world? The short answer to that is absolutely yes, it is obsolete, but art is not a commodity. So that's kind of like the crux of what we're debating here. So we're talking, a lot of people consider film stock to be a stepping stone that got us to cinema, that got us to this art form. My argument, my real base argument that we've finally gotten to 23 minutes into this podcast is that the way that we think about cinema could not exist without the invention of film stock, the limitations of it and the virtues of it. That it's baked into the cake of what it is and how the camera and how it goes through the camera and how it's exposed. If you look at the way that we approach digital editing and digital photography, those softwares that we use are based entirely off of the way that we would edit on film bays and the way that we would shoot on film. It's just adapted to a digital sphere.
Sure.
There's like this digital revolution is really only a technological revolution. It's not an invention of a new art form. It's basically it's basically like jump-started the production of a new art form without necessarily improving it. May I explain further?
Please, absolutely.
Okay. You seem so interested in what I'm going to say.
No, I'm very interested.
Are you okay?
Yes.
So let me back up here. A lot of people relates the sort of problem of film stock going away to the problem of vinyl going away, right? Like vinyl records. My argument is that it'd be more like as if music went away.
Wow.
So
that's a statement right there.
It's a statement.
Can I throw in a quick question?
Yes.
Could you say that, can you make the delineation between the art itself and then the raw material that it is used to be produced? Because we're talking about, SD card versus celluloid, and we're talking about vinyl. I mean, there were also other forms of distribution, like there was VHS, there were DVDs, and then when there was a time where those didn't exist, and then those came into existence, and then eventually we were able to take the movies home from the theaters to our own home, and that changed the film distribution method as we knew it. And now we're getting to a point where we no longer use VHS, we no longer use DVD, and now we have streaming services. So you can kind of see how the timeline took place and how that all like brought us to now, where most people don't go to movies anymore, but we didn't just go from like the cinemas to our home. We can follow that line through how the materials and how the technology of the production developed. So could you say that it's just another stepping stone to how it's going to be?
No. Because there was a starting block. Because there are ways that we think now that did not exist before film existed. Can you give an example?
No. I was going to say, can you take the tradition and the respect and the values that you learned from analog film, preserve just the values of that and the tenets of that, apply it to digital film, and continue forward with digital?
Well, I wonder if there are any people in our audience that work with paint. Let's say that paint went away and the only quote unquote painting that we did was on an iPad.
Sure.
I'm not saying that the work that people do on their iPad, doesn't matter, that they didn't put work into it, but it's not painting, is it? Can you call yourself a painter really if you don't use paint?
I don't think so.
Don't think you can. And so, it's kind of a funny place that we're in because, I'm basically saying, hello everybody, stop the presses. This thing died 20 years ago.
We're acting
Because
like
I'm
it just
actually-
recently died.
Because, I mean, I would say that I think if we're being honest with ourselves, or if I'm being honest with myself, it's like the things that you're talking about, VHS, DVD, also were stepping stones to the death of film production, because we're changing where the thing is experienced and the way that it's experienced. So when we take away that movie house, that's where a lot of our favorite old master directors, some of them are still around, Spielberg, Scorsese, they grew up at a time when that was the only place to see a movie.
Sure.
Except for on TV, once in a while they would play certain films that you had a right to, or that the stations got the rights to. But by and large, you experienced movies in a movie house. If you wanted to see Gone with the Wind, maybe they would play it on TV once a year, or they would revive it. You would have to go to see it. And I think that the democratization of the film art form has diminished its impact significantly. Yeah, I could show you an image of Charlie Chaplin today, and I would say that even Gen Z or Gen Alpha would be like, I know what that is. That's insane. That is a person who was famous in the 20s and the 30s, you know? But that image of like Charlie Chaplin as the little tramp with the hat and the mustache and the big shoes lives on forever.
Yeah, it stood the test of time.
Because there was this limited way to see it. It's also the way that it's like the reason people travel to see the Mona Lisa. I mean, yeah, they can see it on a coffee mug if they want, but is that really seeing the Mona Lisa? No, they know that they want to go see the Mona Lisa or the Statue of David, even if they can see like a reproduction of the Statue of David in their local museum or something like that. So there is an impact there, and I think, but that's even another argument than what I'm saying. I'm saying that this is the art form, cinema, that celluloid is what invented the way that we think about. Basically, let's go back to our question at the beginning.
Sure.
What is a movie? And I would argue that it's 24 photographs a second, or it's a bunch of photographs projected through a projector to create the illusion of movement. But sort of the thing that makes film stand out from, let's say, like the theater or literature or video games even, let's say, is the manipulation of time. Whether that's through, with the manipulation really of like time and space, like whether that's through editing, where you are going from one shot where the camera is in one location and moving it to another location. That's a manipulation of time and space right there. Or just the concept of slow motion. That came from a mistake in the way that people were capturing film. The film was going through the camera too fast. Then when it was projected at the right speed through a projector, suddenly, oh my gosh, we're experiencing time in a completely different way than it had ever been before.
Take notes, Christopher Nolan.
So yeah,
film's been around longer than you.
Tweet this to Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure he could tell you all of these things and tell it to you better. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. It's just like, these things didn't exist. There were attempts to create the illusion of movement, like the zoetrope, which was like this. We can show an image on the screen. It's going to be hard to describe it, but things that created the illusion of movement, or created that theatrical experience, but it just wasn't what it was now. Does this make sense to you? Are you following
I am following
what I'm saying at least?
It is a really interesting lesson because, I mean, we've chatted a little bit before doing this podcast, but you're saying things now that are really fascinating and kind of open up my eyes to how much groundwork has been laid with analog film leading up to even like the 2000s, before Avatar and before the early mid 2000s where digital really started taking place. There was so much that occurred that got us to the point of digital. And I think that is something that should never be forgotten. And it sounds like you were saying the continuation of making movies through analog film preserves that in our minds and in history.
Yeah, making movies and projecting them on analog. Now, that's not to say that digital filmmaking is easy, because anyone who takes their craft seriously in this day and age knows that, the sound process, the color process, the, lighting, and all the same work, a lot of the same work goes into it, or it's a different kind of work that is still painstaking and requires hours and hours and hours of discipline and refining things. So that is not my point at all. But I think we could make the point that the impact of our work has diminished.
Yes.
Because of this, in this digital age. And and I think it's because, partially because of the democratization of the format, which a lot of people say is a good thing, and it's good to some degree. But it's nice that people are able to make films on their phones. And I see some people really doing interesting stuff on TikTok. Like American Baron is a really good example of that. But in digital, you can get away with not trying. And I don't think that's great. I don't think that's good. I think it's good. It's the more that you can engage with an art form, the better. Like, I don't think you need to, there's certain extremes I don't think you need to go to, but there is a filmmaker out there, I can't remember his name, but he made a movie called Bait a couple of years ago. This guy actually made his own film stock for this movie.
Get out.
Yeah.
He made his own film stock?
He made his own film stock.
We need to research this after the podcast.
Processed it. We can throw some images up or a trailer up on there.
Oh my gosh.
That is cool, right?
That is awesome.
Like,
that is so cool.
Like, that is someone who is engaging in his art form.
Absolutely.
And in the actual film stock, there were, experimental filmmakers like I can't remember the name, but there was this movie called Mothlight 8 years ago by this Stan Brakhage, who would like paint on film. And that was his art
I've
form.
heard of that guy.
He would literally paint on the film stock, and that was the art form. Or someone like Norman McLaren. These are like experimental guys, but they're engaging with what the art form really is at its base, which is this series of pictures. And to me, I don't know about you, but to me, that's really cool. And
it's a whole different world of creativity that you
really
get into.
Yeah,
and that's just remarkable.
It's also people playing with their limitations.
Yes.
And
limitations are good.
Limitations are really good. And in the digital age, you have to put them on yourself.
Yeah.
You have to make those decisions. So it's actually harder, I think, to be a complete artist in this era. And case in point, neither of us are that. Well, I'm not. We're in marketing. That's not art. No. We want to do things that are far more creative, and we actually might be doing a project on Super 8 in the future. Stay tuned for that one. That will be very fun. But we're gonna have to be very disciplined with that. And that's just like the tiniest kind of toy kid version of film stock that you can get. But it's still going to take some work to do, and it's going to be really fun to engage in the art form. And I can't I can't wait to jump back into that.
Yes.
And I think that film stock and celluloid should not be dismissed as either as something that the big guns like Christopher Nolan can use because they're Christopher Nolan. And I don't think it should be dismissed as like a stepping stone in the art form. To me, it is the art form. And we live in the time that we live in. It's really not the industry standard, but I think if it was, we would still be okay. I think, I don't know. I think we'd be doing maybe better than we are now. And that's a whole other podcast, but
yes, it is.
Let me ask you, Patrick, what are you going to do now that you've heard
What
me?
are you going to do to prevent forest fires?
Yeah. Like, have I moved? Have I convinced
have
you
you
of
stirred
anything?
my heart?
Yeah.
You have. I think that if I could go out right now and make a movie or a short film or something, I would want it to be on film for my own personal reasons, and then for the reasons that you've brought up with. I 100% agree with you that you're interacting more with the art form when you're using the raw materials and the original form that it was made for. I mean, it's more just a money thing at this point. But if somebody handed me some rolls of film and a film camera, I would go out and make it 100% on that camera and that format over an Alexa Mini or some other type of digital form. Because I truly believe with all my heart that you're engaging with the art more with those materials.
Well, then I win.
You win.
I won the argument.
You win.
Yeah.
Can I give you a high five?
Sure.
A crisp high five?
What is he doing? The four little puppies asked one another. And down they went to see.
Oh, so that was our discussion on analog versus digital formats, and I thought I won.
I think...
And that's the Catholic Film Club. This podcast is brought to you by the Center for Catholic Media at Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas. Follow us on our social to keep up with the upcoming episodes we're going to do. Upcoming at the end of the month, we're going to be talking about The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yes, we are.
The cartoon. And this is a great film, and I really hope that people check it out if they haven't seen it or revisit it. And if they would like to send in their comments or hot takes, please do so. And you can reach us at the links down below. So God bless. Thank you, Patrick.
You're welcome.
Thanks for being a good sport.
Drink some water before my mouth just
and losing
throat dies.
miserably.
Yeah, thank you.
Linnea, back to the story.
Smell something, said the pokey little puppy. Then the four little puppies began to sniff. Rice pudding, they said. And home they went, as fast as they could go. And there, sure enough, was dinner waiting for them. With rice pudding.
This is making me hungry.
It's making me choke. Stop the recording. Oh my gosh.